Hello, everybody, and welcome to the March 10th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Richard Migliore.
I like the show today. I think part of a lot of what we're going to talk about is track bias and how that plays into certain trips and horses that we need to look for next time.
I agree, and I think nothing is more important than talking about Saturday's card that had a strong inside bias.
Yeah.
Something that's unusual on the inner track, and certainly one of the stronger ones we've had in a while, Richie, but those are great days to use horses to bet back both on and against.
Well, exactly. You know, we talk about trips and traps. Well, we'll certainly find a few traps out of that card as well.
Absolutely. An interesting card as well, and we'll talk about the Gotham. We're going to start out with one from Friday, the 4th. It's a little hard to get the days all straight because we're running Thursday through Sunday. And this is one, the Force Sin Sin, who breaks so well. And I have a question to start it out, Richie. Do you think that she's just a laggard? And if you're riding a horse like this, after the sharp break, do you do what you can to try to maintain your position, or is she a horse that tends to take herself out of the race?
Well, I think Dylan was expecting her to drop back and maybe should have been just a touch more aggressive, because I think now she's going to start losing position, where if maybe after that clean break, you kind of go forward a little bit and you wind up laying just a touch closer. Now the fact that the one's got inside of him, he's getting surrounded, it kind of limits your options.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's hard to know exactly, and to be fair, had she not gotten into a significant point of trouble, which will show, she was going to win this race, so maybe dropping back wasn't a bad thing from a positional standpoint, but it put her between a rock and a hard place eventually.
Well, you almost wish that she had dropped back a little bit further and was able to get in the clear sooner, because right here, he wants to go forward and follow the one. And you can see he's niggling at her now. She's getting kicked back in the face, but the 1A is parked outside of her, and it really takes away any option he has. And you're going to see, I think this was the bad decision here, because you're not anticipating that you're not going to be able to get out of this spot, and basically he gets run into a blind switch. When the 2 stops and the 1A's going on, you're going to see it come up here. He's going to have significant trouble.
I have a question. Is it a bit of a tag team thing here? Because the 1 at this point, well, the 2 kind of comes out and shuts the door. The 1A keeps him in. I guess the 1A felt he had horse, and he doesn't want to give him any advantage, because he does really shut the door on him, and he ends up finishing a distant 4th.
Yeah, but, you know, Wembley was a contender. I mean, they were the second choice in the betting. You had to think that, or favored in the betting, that she was going to go on. She didn't. That's one of those cases in hindsight you go, wow, I didn't have to be that rough on the guy. But at the time, that's the horse to beat, so you're just doing your job.
No, Richie, I think that's perfectly fair. I believe that riders legally have a right to do that, and sometimes I wish they'd do more of it, because imagine if it was close at the finish. Imagine if the 4 ends up being the 1, he lets him out, and the 4 beats the 1A by a half length. Anybody who bets the 1A, anybody who's involved with the 1A has a right to say, dude, you had a chance to shut the door to that guy, you let him through. I was being nice.
Listen, you want to, if you've got an advantage on somebody, it's your job, your responsibility to take advantage of your advantage. Don't give it away. Legally, he didn't, it wasn't like he came in, he basically said, no, 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 you're there, you figure out how to get out of there. It's one of those things, again, in hindsight, if I was empty, I'd want to give a guy a break. You don't know at that point if you're empty.
Fair enough, and he was moving forward at that point, as you say. He was part of an entry that took a lot of money, and you'll see it in other situations where, you know, you've got 2 in front coming top of the stretch, and there's a guy who's parked 3 ways, a guy here. I don't want this guy letting the guy inside out. Obviously, if I bet the horse inside, I hope he lets me out. But you never cry when he doesn't let you out, because it's his job to keep you in. He's trying to legally win the race.
He's trying to legally win the race. I got to tell quickly, years ago, Bailey's got me in behind 2, pocket on the turf. He's driving. I got a lot of horse. He said, come on out of there. He let me out. When I came out, his horse got interested and ran on with me, and we got to bumping each other. He beat me a neck. So I claimed foul.
It was your job to claim foul.
It was my job that he let me out.
And knowing what a good guy Jerry is, I'm sure he took it in stride.
Well, you know, they didn't take it down because I gave it as good as I got it. But that's one of those circumstances where you think you're empty, but then your horse gets running. And now if I beat him, he's going to feel horrible about it. So you really, it's a hard judgment at that moment. And if anything, I'd rather err on the side of being overly aggressive than being complacent.
Right. And one thing between you and Jerry, 2 guys who always wanted to win at all costs, so he wouldn't have let you out unless he felt it was empty, and it turned out he wasn't, but he misread it.
Well, if anything, it probably helped his horse get running in because he had company to run down there with. Now, quickly, though, getting back to the moment, Dylan Davis will take a lot of heat for this ride, and rightfully so.
Yep.
But I do want to say, I think Dylan Davis is a very talented young guy. He made a mistake. Won't be his first, won't be his last. As long as he learns, from those mistakes.
Yeah, not putting yourself in that position and maybe trying to hold your position a little bit, though I don't think the horse did him any favors. The last 3 races that we're going to look at are all from Saturday's card, and we want to start out with the 6th race on Saturday, and we want to look at 2 horses. One, the 8, Cassie Guapo, who was about 16 hours the best in here, and the other, the 7 horse in here, who was a speed coach's challenge. And Aaron Greyer was intent on getting the lead with a long shot eventual 52-1 winner. I get it. But Irad Ortiz, who is a terrific young rider and one of the top riders in the country at this point.
Yes.
Having said that, he is not a rider that does a good job of adapting to circumstances, and lazily sitting out in the 3 path and no sense of urgency on a track significantly favoring speed with a horse that had the speed to possibly make the lead did his horse and its backers no favors. Cassie Guapo we'll talk about with Kendrick Carmouche. Kendrick tried. He had no choice. He did not have the speed to get there. And I think he didn't adapt to circumstances well, but he was dealt a very bad hand.
Which was exacerbated by the fact that he kind of got bounced around, pinballed a bit out of the break, and kind of took him out of any sort of position. And the way this track was playing, you wanted forward position, you wanted to be inside. I agree with you 100% on Irad Ortiz. Terrific, talented young guy, one of the best riders in the country. But if he has an Achilles heel, it's he rides a lot of good horses. And what happens is, and you see it sometimes with Johnny Velazquez, they tend to say, well, I'm laying 3rd in the clear. If I'm best, they're going to win. On a track like this, you've got to read the situation and use your horse more. Aaron Greyer won this race.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And you know what? Maybe Irad was never going to clear him, and he was always going to be between a rock and a hard place. And this horse's first time stretching out was totally eliminated by the bias. But he should have done whatever he could to at least get there. And if he ends up parked too wide outside of Aaron, at least he tried to get there. He had the bad luck of breaking outside of that horse. He didn't do it. And, you know, the thing about it, and you see Cassie Guapo, and I think that Kendrick got very frustrated here, and he went 4 or 5 wide. Cassie Guapo loses this entire race by about 1.5 lengths. He was about 5 lengths the best, in my opinion. I don't think you can measure it, but he was much the best. I think that Irad has to realize we're not always riding at Belmont Park. He gave the perfect ride at Belmont Park.
Sure.
He did not give the perfect ride on the Aqueduct Inner, especially when it's favoring the inside.
It's a great point. That ride's going to win 95% of the time if you have horse at Belmont Park. There's no doubt about it. The way the track was, and this was later in the day, the 6th race, I mean, everybody was pretty aware of the fact that speed was good, inside was better, you needed to be forward and inside. And I get it, too. Psychologically, you've got a 50-1 shot going inside of you. Well, maybe you're thinking, he'll come back to me. It just underscores how strong the bias was.
I agree. And the first 3 finished in this race, I know you see the 2 finishing outside, but they spent the vast majority of this race on the rail, and that's something that's very important. And what we want people to get out of this is, we'll talk about specific incidents, but look over this Saturday card. There are gems in there. There are going to be horses that come back. There's one running on Saturday off a big winning performance that is completely dressed up because of the rail, and horses you can rightfully bet against that will be undervalued. And there will be horses like a Coach's Challenge who finished 8th in here, and he was completely compromised by the racetrack, and it exaggerates his bad performance. Whether or not he would have won is open to debate, but he's not nearly as bad as performance makes him look.
And on the flip side of that, a horse like Summit Moon, who spent most of the race parked down on the inside, he's probably doesn't. His race wasn't as good as it looks.
I absolutely agree. I mean, whether Cassie Guapo was claiming this race going to come back and win is your guess. He was going to win today. But it's not just him. It's other horses throughout the day. As we take a look at the 8th race, and a race that Little Popsy took advantage of the gold rail, it helped that the speeds, the 4 and 5, had trouble. Boy, did the 5 get unlucky, as did the 7. But the 5 in here, who finished 4th, True Bet, boy, did he have a trip.
Oh, he had. You could see the bouncing around, leaving the starting gate.
Blue.
And the rider's trying to straighten up. Now we're going to go a little further, and it's going to get worse because he's going to wind up clipping heels here as the Bob Baffert nearly went down. Now, that's not a rider's fault when things like this happen, but I will say this. I was watching this post-grade very intently. And even though it didn't work out, the Big Deluxe warmed up like a horse who wanted to go. He didn't have his speed. He was awful on the day. True Bet warmed up very, very quietly. And it seemed to me like either they were counting on him having that, big speed, or they were looking to take him back, because you don't basically jog a horse to the gate on a day like this if you want them to show speed.
And, I understand when you handicap the race on Thursday or Friday, whenever you looked at it before you saw the bias, and you have True Bet, who's one of 3 speeds, the 2, 4, and 5, you think, well, I'm in the enviable position of 2 things. Having the outside horse of the 3 speeds, and this is the 7. The 5 has fallen out. The 7, Gypsum Johnny, is compromised by the racetrack in his wide trip, the fact that the 2 was able to get loose, and a potential duel didn't develop, because I believe Gypsum Johnny is the one horse you truly want out of this race. The 2 is totally dressed up here. But the point is, so they said, we don't mind stalking. But now the track develops, and you say, I'm going to have to adjust my plan. I'm going to have to at least do what I can to get into position to get to the inside. There's the 7, there's the 5. And keep in mind, True Bet, who finishes actually a creditable 4th in the year, he did save ground after what happened early. But they've got to try to come up with some plan so they don't get hung out wide. And the best way to do it is to at least be aggressive out of the gate, get your position going forward, Richie. And you're saying you don't even think they were going to do that without the trouble.
Well, no, not watching him warm up. They warmed up with no intention. You've got to get a horse's blood going. You've got to get them loosened up. And you've got to get them focused and thinking about running out of the gate, especially on a day like this. My question to you is, I believe True Bet naturally was the fastest horse early in this race. And they didn't do anything.
It's
all right, questionable?
It's tough. The 2 and 4 are fast horses.
All right, well, but better question. Did you see little Popsy getting the lead this easy?
No. He only got it because the 4 had trouble, the 5 had trouble, and we don't know what the 5 was thinking or not. You have a very good feeling, and you have good back. You can back it up. So he might have gotten it, but he had the advantage of being the inside of the speeds, and that's the thing. Yeah. It was going to help him. The thing is, listen, sometimes you're dealt a bad hand, and it's not going to work out. And maybe if this race breaks cleanly, the 2, 4, and 5 duel, and True Bet ends up the 3-wide dueler, and he has no chance on that trip.
Sure.
You know what? That's a bad hand he was dealt. The question is, did you do anything to deal with your bad hand? And we're going to see in the Gotham what Irad Ortiz did with Shagaf that helped a hand that might have not worked out had he not gone to the inside.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to watching it because I think it's a great example of just what you're saying. But I think with True Bet, when I watched him, they just did not come out of the or warm him up with like the intention to go, and that's the part that's hard. Now maybe he would have got shut off anyway out of the gate. That happens. I would have felt better about it if I saw them warm up with intention like they were going to be aggressive.
No, I think it's a very good point. And listen, horse players have to adapt their game as the day goes on. I mean, listen, we make picks before the day. You have horses. Everybody has a game plan going in. But when you like a horse as a deep closer and he's got an outside post and the track is playing like Saturday, you have to say to yourself, well, he's 30 to 1. I'll bet $10 on him. I was going to bet 50. You've got to bet a couple dollars, but you have to realize you've got to adapt, and you've got to sometimes include horses you wouldn't. Well, the trainers and jockeys have to do the same thing, and in some ways, I think it's a rider's job sometimes to say to the trainer, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but.
Right, because a lot of times the trainer comes over from the barn. He hasn't been in the jockey's room or riding races all day. It's up to the rider to provide that information. And I think that's why it's such a difficult job, what you do, public handicappers anywhere. You're giving your picks well out in front before you know how tracks are going to play.
You know what? I appreciate that, but so what? That's the hand you're dealt. Jason and I come on before every race and have an opportunity to say, listen, I picked, Secretariat in this race, but I don't see him getting the kind of trip. And my third choice, he could be the inside speed, and we all have to adapt. And that's the name. Successful horse players adapt. They don't just stick to, the hard-line positions. And I think you have to understand, the people that want to hold us to our picks in the morning, be our guests, but we're all trying to play this game in a positive way together.
Adapt, evolve, survive.
Yeah, absolutely, or you won't. Now we can take a look at the Gotham and take a look at this race, because I think you have to realize the winner obviously benefits, or the second horse benefits from the track. At this point, Irad outbreaks the winner, but he knows the winner's going to go. And thankfully, he doesn't make the decision to stay towards the inside. Now, Sunny Ridge is unlucky, and Adventist a little bit off the rails some of the race. I thought that Shagaf got a winning ride by Irad that made the difference because he got behind the one and saved ground until he had to come out. And because of the post, the situation, I don't think that Sunny Ridge had much choice, but he ends up in an unenviable position, 3 wide pretty much the whole way.
Yeah, and his post basically sealed his fate. And he's a bit of almost a one-pace, a good cruising speed, but a one-pace kind of horse. And now he's grinding from the outside. The winning move was Irad Ortiz easing back, tucking back in behind the one here, and getting to that good inside and stayed there for as long as he possibly could. That was the winning move. Adventist still broke a half a step slow, still a little bit green. A horse that I know you agree with me has a lot of ability, but I think Sunny Ridge and Adventist had trips that were difficult on the day.
I agree. The one thing I don't like that Manny did on the first turn, there's Sunny Ridge out there, and here's the 2 and 3 behind him. is that he actually let the 8 get inside of him and went outside of him. Once again, that's a good position at Belmont Park. He should have held his ground and been too wide, stalking on the inside. He shouldn't have gone the outside, and it leads me to believe that Manny, who, you know, I think the world of Manny Franco. I think Manny Franco could be as good a rider as we have around. I think he's got all the tools, but I don't think he was paying enough attention.
Well, I think that, and I also think this horse could be a little bit difficult because he just seems a bit heavy-headed to me, a kind of horse that needs to be in the clear. Yeah. And, you know, just a little bit hard to gauge when you're in behind horses with him. We saw Adventist have to come out, steady a little bit, come out. Shagaf got the perfect trip. You know, even though he had to come off the rail.
He had to close outside the stretch. It's a very hard thing to quantify, but he got every perfect trip up to that point, the best trip he could have gotten.
Absolutely. You know, you think about harness racing and how they'll stay single filing behind him, and the horse that comes out late gets it, and the horse that makes that run around the turn kind of flattens out. That was Sonny Ridge's trip. Adventist, I think, partly because he's still just a young green horse with a lot of ability, that he's getting these kind of compromised tricks because he's not helping himself any. And I think he's a really good horse that I hope at some point they say, you know what, let's give him a little bit more of a chance, because I think it's a long year. The second half of the year, he could be a major, major player. Talk about Shagaf. In spite of that good trip, the things that I took away from positive, you knew he had ability, but he showed another dimension, taking kickback, having to come from off the pace. I thought he showed more quality in this victory than just the ability that was evident.
Well, I think if he's your horse, you have to be very first of all, he won.
Sure.
So the end result couldn't have been better.
Right.
He's got 50 points. He's in the Derby. He can run last in this next race.
Sure.
He's in the Derby. But as you say, they got education. They jammed him in behind horses. He ate some dirt. He adapted to all that. In his other races, he's been out stalking in the clear in one-turn races. So he showed that he's a good two-turn horse, and he can take some dirt, and he learned from this race. They got what they wanted from it. I don't know how you judge this race. It got an 87 buyer. If he got an absolutely perfect trip and went out and stayed in the rail, maybe he would have got a 93 buyer. But then he might have gotten it by staying on the rail the whole way, and that was really good.
Sure.
What's the right figure for him? I don't know. But you know what? The Wood Memorial's coming up. We're still a ways away from the Derby. He's a developing horse that answered the questions in here. And a lot of things went well, but he answered the questions.
Yeah, he answered the questions, and I thought with flying colors. And you know, listen, he helped himself as well. Breaking running like that opens up so many options for you and your rider. So once he got away cleanly, ran a little bit to the first turn, made Aaron Grider go on with Lauban, now, okay, now I can tuck in. If he hadn't come out running, now if Aaron gets to gallop lead, maybe he's hung up galloping on the outside. That's why you get your position going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It gave him that option because once he did that and the one ran off, then he could tuck in very neatly behind him. Sonny Ridge, victimized by the post. Sonny Ridge is a horse that's going to be a factor as a 3-year-old, assuming he stays sound. I like this horse, and I know you agree. That does it for this week's Trips and Traps. We can once again always use your help. It's Trips and Traps at NYRank.com.